Hey everyone, welcome back to Continuous Thunder. One of these days we'll get back to doing one video a week, but I don't know when that's going to happen. But since we're here, let's get to what we're actually talking about. We're talking about the new album from Of Monsters and Men, Fever Dream, out now on Republic Records. Of Monsters and Men are an Icelandic band that took the alternative radio and indie folk worlds by storm with their debut album, My Head is an Animal. There are songs on here that just seem to permeate through every aspect of pop culture, and whether you know it or not, I almost guarantee that you've heard a song off this album. And it's actually pretty dang good. It's a little long and it does have some filler, but the reason why those singles took off is pretty apparent. This album, Fever Dream, is their third album. It is their shortest one so far, and it marks a very clear and very obvious change in musical direction for the band. The sound for their third album has changed to a more electronic-driven alternative pop rock. And that is quite a departure from where the band came from, where they started. Their first album, the one that I mentioned that, everyone heard the song Little Talks and Dirty Paws and everything. Everyone heard these songs. It was this indie folk piece that had kind of, bits of Arcade Fire, a little bit of Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros with the dash of the Decemberists in it and everything. And it really was, I honestly think their first album was a case of being at the right place at the right time. They came in like right at the peak of the indie folk wave, and they had the perfect blend of all the right bands, the right sounds and everything, and they just, it worked wonderfully for them. Their second album was a bit more of the same, but with a bit more of like a moody alternative rock feel with, a couple hints of bands like Coldplay or something in there, but the album ended up just being not all that memorable, their second album. I know it's a favorite among some of the fans and everything, but I could barely remember any of the tracks when I went back to listen to it for this review. Bottom line is it just failed to be the same indie folk tour de force that their debut was. Now, when it comes to the change in sound on this new album, Fever Dream, the change came about literally to avoid making the same album a third time. Band member Nana Bryndís Hilmarsdóttir even said in an interview that she started songwriting with a computer and using electronic sounds because when she was writing with an acoustic guitar, she found that she kept going back to the same places. So she went to where her inspiration was being found. The song Alligator, which is the opener for this album, it's the one you've probably been hearing on the radio. This change is apparent right from the get-go with this track. And whether or not this album was the first one written for this album, I don't know. But whenever they wrote it, they say that this song in particular just kind of set the goal, set the trend for this entire album. And for the most part, that is the case. The song Alligator in particular captures the alt-rock electronic spirit pretty well, although I will admit that in some instances it reminds me a bit of The Naked and Famous, but overall it's a pretty solid track. I enjoy it every time I hear it come on the radio. All subsequent tracks on this album have some electronic element to them, and a couple even have very clear disco influences, namely tracks like Vulture Vulture, Wars, and Soothsayer. While this new direction is a welcome change and is better executed than attempts by other indie folk bands to break out of their sound, for example, see Mumford & Sons, how well they've been doing, the album isn't fantastic. Yes, it does have a few standout tracks. However, the rest of them almost lean a little bit too much on current top 40 tropes and everything, and the majority of the track list end up being kind of bland. And this mostly plagues the more mid-tempo tracks like A Hey, Row Row Row, and Sleepwalker. And I just want to be clear that these songs aren't necessarily bad, and they still maintain some level of Monsters and Men personality, particularly in their vocal melodies and in the lyrics themselves. This band clearly hasn't forgotten where they came from. You know, there's actually a very clever and nice little nod to the song Dirty Paws from their debut in the climactic closing to the song Stuck in Gravity, where Ragnar Thorolfsson sings that his head is still an animal. You know, it's a nice, clever little nod. However, these songs just fail to live up to the same memorability. They don't quite tickle your ears quite the same way that their debut did. It turns out that the first track, the lead single, Alligator, is the most standout track on this album. There are maybe 5 or 6 others that are decent. They range from more of the, you know, disco tinged ones to the slower ballads like Stuck in Gravity, or Waiting for the Snow in particular is a very beautiful ballad. But truly the rest of the songs, and we're talking about between 4 and 6 other tracks on this album, are really just kind of meh. Overall, I still give Fever Dream a 3.5 out of 5. Of Monsters and Men have taken a bold step away from their established sound, and sometimes that can be a hard thing to do when your established sound got you a #1 album and a handful of hit singles. They didn't knock this one out of the park, but I feel that it's still a respectable effort. I believe that they are moving in the right direction. There's just still a little more growth that needs to happen. Moving on to my other suggestions for this week, just a reminder that links to all of these albums, not only the major review, but these 3 suggestions are also going to be down in the description. I actually remembered to mention that this time instead of in my sign-off, so goodie for me. Anyway, so first up, we have Children of the Sun with Flowers, and Sun here has a little umlaut on the oob. This is a debut album from a Swedish psychedelic classic style rock band. The female singer, they nailed this old 60s and 70s psychedelic rock sound pretty well. Some of the tracks can drag out a little bit, but overall they do a pretty good job on this one. Up next, I'm going to shout out the new Possessor album, Gravelands. This is a short little 7-track, 31-minute offering here from this kind of sludgy stoner metalish band. Pretty solid, pretty high energy for, you know, like the stoner crowd and everything, but it's a good time. And finally, I'm going to shout out the new Wolves at the Gate album, Eclipse. I normally don't go for this post-hardcore metalcore type stuff. Most of the time it seems just a little too normie for me when it comes to metal music, but these guys here deliver some pretty solid riffs and hooks on this album. I was pleasantly surprised with this one, so go ahead and check that one out too. But that's going to do it for this round of Continuous Thunder. Thank you so much for watching. Now I'd like to know your thoughts. Did you listen to this album? Did you like it? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? You can go ahead and leave your thoughts down in the comments below. You can also leave suggestions for the next thing that I should review. Quick reminder that you can follow this channel on Instagram at CT Music Review and at Twitter, also at CT Music Review. Those handles are on the screen and there will be links down in the description. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.